The movie opens with two young kids talking in a lovely field. The boy promises that when they are adults, they will get married to each other. To show his sincerity, he gives the girl a necklace with a key pendant and keeps the locket for himself. He reveals that the locket can only be opened with that key. 12 years later, the boy, Raku Achicho, has grown up. He is a member of the Yakuza, a Japanese mafia gang who will eventually succeed his father as the head of the Yakuza clan. Raku, however, disapproves of his family's line of work and isn't interested in joining the gang since he hates violence. Later, as he prepares to leave for school, his several bodyguards follow him, which he finds annoying. Raku asks them to leave him alone, but they tell him that some rival gang members are in the area. Nevertheless, Raku manages to ditch them and arrives at school alone. As he makes his way to class, he suddenly gets kicked by a blonde girl, which causes him to fall to the ground. This makes him very angry, and they get into a conflict. Moments later, Raku panics when he realizes that he's lost his necklace. But just then, a girl named Kosaki Onodera returns his lost necklace. Raku seems to have a huge crush on Kosaki as he keeps glancing at her even after they arrive at class. Sometime later, the teacher introduces a new transfer student called Chitoki Kirasaki to the class, who turns out to be the same girl that kicked Raku earlier. She tells the class that she recently moved from New York and she is half American and half Japanese. As soon as Raku sees her, he confronts her for her earlier behavior, and they start to call each other names. Following some heated words, Chitogi aggressively throws Raku in front of the entire class. Later that night, when Raku gets home, his father takes him to see the condition of a number of their men who have been severely hurt. They were injured while fighting members of the Beehive gang who have just come from New York. The father says that only Raku can put an end to the conflict between the Beehive and the Yakuza clan. Raku assures his father that he will do whatever it takes to prevent a war. After that, his father advises him to start a fake relationship with the New York gangster's daughter. He then takes Raku to meet the girl, and much to his surprise, it's none other than Chitoge. Both Raku and Chitogi object and refuse to follow through with this plan, but their respective fathers force them to at least pretend to be in a relationship so that the two families can be at peace. Suddenly, they hear an explosion outside. Once again, it's the Beehive gang. They assume that the Yukazas have abducted Chitoge. However, her father appears and stops them, revealing that his daughter is in a relationship with Raku. Hearing this, the men are perplexed, but they finally stand down. Raku and Chitogi are forced to fake their relationship. However, her bodyguard Claude is very suspicious, so he decides to keep a close eye on them. The next morning, Chitogi arrives at Raku's house and invites him on a date. Raku initially declines, but when he notices people from both gangs staring at them, he agrees to go. Their date is awkward as the two have extremely different personalities. Nonetheless, they carry on with the charade and avoid raising any suspicion. The next day, the rumors of their romance have spread across the school, and everyone congratulates them. Kosaki, on the other hand, appears to be upset because she secretly likes Raku. Since Raku also likes her, he tries to dispel the rumors, but when he notices Claude watching him, he has no choice but to acknowledge the relationship. Meanwhile, Chitogi is feeling lonely at school. Everyone is afraid to be her friend as she receives special treatment and has bodyguards who follow her everywhere. Raku feels sorry for her as he can relate going through the same thing. One day, Chitogi is alone in class and writes facts about her classmates so that she can be friends with them. Just then, Raku comes up to her and helps her by providing information about the other students. However, the next day, the other students accidentally find Chitogi's friend list, but they assume it to be a hit list targeting them. While the other students panic, Kosaki understands that Chitogi has created the list to get to know them better. So she invites Chitogi to come in and introduce herself so they can become friends. This delights Chitogi as she has finally made a new friend. Following this, the teacher introduces a new transfer student named Marika Takabana to the class. She is also escorted by a bodyguard as she is the daughter of a police commissioner. Surprisingly, as soon as she sees Raku, she rushes to embrace him. Marika then reveals that she has been looking for him her entire life and asks him to marry her. Expectedly, this shocks Raku as he doesn't even know her. But before he can say anything, Chitogi steps in and tells Marika that she and Raku are in a romantic relationship. A while later, Claude gets suspicious of Marika's presence and questions her relationship with Raku while pointing a gun at him. However, Raku claims that he has never met the girl and he only loves Chitogi. As Claude chases and tries to shoot him, Raku jumps out the window and falls into the swimming pool. Claude states that Raku is too weak and unworthy of Chitogi and leaves, but the latter arrives at the right time to save Raku. In the following scene, Raku regains consciousness and finds Chitogi by his side. When she asks him about his necklace, he reveals that he made a promise to a girl a long time ago. He had given her the key to his necklace, and he is looking for the girl to fulfill his promise. A few days later, Raku, Chitogi, and Kosaki plan a study group at Raku's house. Chitogi arrives with her beehive group, while Raku is accompanied by Yakuza members. Marika, on the other hand, unexpectedly appears with a special police force. Just then, Kosaki arrives to join the study group, and Raku is delighted to see her. As the four of them study together, Raku continues to gaze at Kosaki while Marika tries to grab his attention. Later, as Raku and Chitogi decide to get a fan from the storeroom, the Yakuza members lock them inside to bring them closer together. However, Chitogi seems to be afraid of the dark and she reaches out for Raku in fear. However, they trip up and Raku lands on top of her. Just then, Claude opens the door and is too startled to act or speak. Marika and Kosaki also show up, and Raku tries to explain the situation, but to no avail. In the next scene, we see Kosaki keeps a necklace with a key pendant in a box, making her the girl from Raku's childhood. The following day, an announcement about a play is made in class. Kosaki suggests performing Romeo and Juliet because Raku had mentioned that story to her when they were kids. The theme is approved by the teacher, and the entire class suggests Raku and Chitogi for the starring roles, which upsets Kosaki. A few days later, Chitogi and Raku are practicing for the play, but their acting is so bad that the director tells them to leave. Later that night, Raku and his friends join a haunted house game. As they are playing on a team, Kosaki and Raku take the opportunity to get close to one another. However, when one of their friends tells him that Chitogi is lost, Raku immediately sets off to find her. He ultimately finds her cowering in fear and panic and brings her back. Surprisingly, Chitogi appears to be falling for Raku, and she tells him that it wouldn't be disastrous if they were lovers. However, Raku says that their relationship would never work since they would argue constantly. Disappointed, Chitogi goes back to her room where she overhears a conversation between Marika and Kosaki about the man Kosaki is promised to marry. When she notices the key necklace, she realizes that Raku and Kosaki are the childhood soulmates. The next day, everyone returns to school, and Chitogi relinquishes the role of Juliet to Kosaki. Hearing this, Raku senses something is wrong, so he follows her, asking what the problem is. Unfortunately, this only leads to an argument that ends with Chitogi slapping him. She then visits Kosaki and reveals her arranged relationship, while claiming Raku knows he is truly destined to be with his childhood love. In the next scene, it is opening night, and during the final rehearsal, an iron lock falls on Kosaki's leg, severely injuring it. As a result, Chitogi is asked to step in. She hesitates, but they can't find anyone else at this point. During the play, Chitogi forgets her lines, and Raku encourages her to ad-lib. So she insults him, and he responds by insulting her, resulting in an onstage battle of words. However, the audience believes it's part of the performance, so they engage by roaring and cheering for them. Following that, they perform the remaining acts of the play smoothly, subtly expressing their feelings throughout. Following the performance, Chitogi asks Raku to come to the roof, and he excitedly hurries there. However, when he arrives, he sees Kosaki waiting for him. Kosaki reveals that she is the girl who he promised to marry. She even shows him the key, which perfectly matches his locket, and says that she still likes him. However, Raku doesn't feel the same. He apologizes to Kosaki for creating this childhood fantasy and says that he has fallen in love with Chitogi. The kind and understanding Kosaki accepts his decision, wishing him all the best, and departs. Following this, Raku hurries to find Chitogi but discovers that she has transferred schools and is heading back to New York. Panicked, he rushes to the airport with his bodyguards while Marika helps him navigate the traffic. As they reach the airport, the two gangs come toe-to-toe. Chitogi kneels down and begs them to let him go. The bodyguards seem moved by this, and they finally let him go. Moments later, Claude shows up and violently beats him up. At gunpoint, he demands proof of his love for Chitogi. Surprisingly, Raku, who is unapologetic about his love, tells Claude to go ahead and shoot him. Claude then pulls the trigger, but the gun is empty. Eventually, he is convinced that Raku genuinely loves Chitogi and allows him to pursue her. In the meantime, Chitogi, who is in her father's private jet, sees Raku rushing after her as the plane taxis before takeoff. She immediately disembarks the plane and notices his bruises. Raku tells her that she is not the only person he has been seeking, but claims that he loves only her and cannot be happy with anyone else. Finally, Chitogi and Raku embrace and kiss each other.